nickel for every time I talked about a show produced by Crave in the year of our Lord 2026, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot of money, but it's weird that it happened twice. Okay, I get it. I know I'm several months late to the conversation, and I'm sorry, but I get it now. I am, in fact, a heated Rivalry fan. I've seen the edits, I've listened to the soundtrack, I've even seen the shitty gay porn parodies. I get the hype now. I really do. In fact, I have, just a couple thoughts, really. Nothing particularly arousing, just a few teeny, tiny notes. You see the video length, don't you? This story, fascinating. The moment I finished the show, I walked my fine ass down to my local bookstore, picked up a copy, and finished it in like a day. And I don't even ride for sports like that. I'm a fucking queer socialist who reads bell hooks in his free time and likes to watch a TV show where silly gay people get to dress up in wigs. Hashtag Team Jane Don't. Oh. Throw the whole season out. Cancel the trip to Palm Springs. I need a screwdriver stat. So I'm not exactly what someone would consider a sports yaoi kind of person. And yet, after finishing the first season, heated Rivalry has stuck with me. But why? Well, for starters, I think the premise in itself is compelling. We all love a good enemies to lovers trope, but it goes deeper than that because they're not just enemies. They're rivals. Dare I say, heated ones. It's the name of the book. Something as traditionally conservative, masculine, and homophobic as hockey is the perfect backdrop for this kind of romance. There's something so compelling about the fantasy of a secret queer romance on ice, the tension, the drama, and the sweet homosexual release, which is Rachel Reed's favorite way to describe cum, by the way. Personally, I would just put my big boy pants on and call it by its biblical name. Jizz. Heated Rivalry has taken over the world by storm. It remains ever present in the backdrop of 2026 pop culture. Gay clubs are throwing HR-themed parties, all the things she said went viral. In a lot of ways, Jacob Tierney's adaptation of Rachel Reed's original book is the closest thing we've experienced to a monoculture in quite a while. I think the last time I've seen people so tightly united around some kind of cultural event was the Eras Tour. In a 2025 article for The Hollywood Reporter titled, "Down to Puck, Why Women Are Going Wild for Heated Rivalry," a league rep for the National Hockey League said,
"There are so many ways to get hooked on hockey, and in the NHL's 108-year history, this might be the most unique driver for creating new fans," a league rep tells THR. "See you all at the rink."
Even the biggest organization for hockey in the world has taken notice. Despite its surface level premise, the lake runs deep beneath the ice. There are depths to Heated Rivalry, and I want to understand why. Why are so many people compelled by this story? What can we learn about sexuality, gender, desire itself? What even is the meaning of love? Well, I don't have an answer for that, Linda, because I'm just a geriatric twink with a degree in journalism and critical race studies. But for some reason, the Olympian gods have demanded an equinox tribute, and I am overdue. Okay, Athena, goddess of wisdom, battle strategy, owls, and my godly parent, here is my offering. Act 1. The Rivalry. Heated Rivalry tells the story of a secret, decade-long rivalry turned romance between two hockey captains. Shane Hollander plays for the Montreal Metros. He's laid back, gentle, earnest, and a little awkward. Despite being one of the best in a very violent sport, he really is just a good boy. A little fun fact is that in another December 2025 article for The Hollywood Reporter, Hudson Williams, who portrays Shane Hollander, actually confirmed that the character does in fact have autism, and the way he portrayed the character was informed by his father's own experiences and Rachel Reed's direction. I thought that was really sweet. Neat touch. Meanwhile, Ilya Rozanov leads the Boston Raiders. He's direct, arrogant, aloof, and incredibly incredibly sexy. The dichotomy between their personalities is complementary, but initially it's combative. I mean, it's apparent from just their first meeting alone. While Hollander tries to extend a friendly greeting, Rozanov is cold and aloof. After wishing him luck in the rookie tournament, Reed writes,
"Maybe Hollander expected Ilya to wish him luck as well." But Ilya just dropped his hands and turned to go back inside the rink. In the car, Shane told his parents that he had been talking to Ilya Rozanov. "What's he like?" his mother asked. "Kind of a dick," Shane said.
This animosity only grows over the years. Publicly, their rivalry is a massive marketing point for the NHL, or MLH. I'm assuming that change was made for copyright reasons. Anyways, their on-ice romance permeates everything: the league, the marketing, and even their own relationships. They are frequently reminded by close friends and family that they hate each other. There's actually a point in the story where in 2014, they present an award together and really milk the whole rivalry thing. I had to throw a sex pun in there. I'm so sorry. But they really milk the whole rivalry thing. I thought that was a very amusing beat. However, behind the scenes, it's a different story. Around the same time Hollander and Rozanov get drafted, they share an intimate workout. While not overtly sexual, the tension is there. I mean, especially in the show when they're racing on the stationary bikes, the way the camera lingers on their lips, the way they grunt and pant, the water bottle as phallic imagery. That tension eventually breaks about a year after they meet, when Rozanov propositions Hollander in the showers after filming a commercial together. And thus begins the 7-year-long secret. Enemies by day, fuck buddies by night. Well, it gets a little more complicated than that, but we'll get there. Let's first take a step back and ask, why is this dynamic so compelling? In gay erotic media, when you think of forbidden pairings, the first one my mind wanders to is coach and player. I mean, if you just take a peek at men.com, there's more than a handful of these scenes on there. Cocky coach part 1, cocky coach part 2, wrestling coach spanked me. I seduced my wrestling coach. Yoga master. Aaron Winwin putting the nom in namaste. Too bad he's a Trumpy though. Boo! Boo! I hate it when gay porn stars are Trumpers. Pick a struggle, you bottom. So this kind of fantasy is not new. In fact, tons of erotic media fetishize the power dynamic between a dominant and submissive occupation: teacher and student, coach and player, boss and employee. Now, a Gen Z genderqueer might look at this and say, "This is an endorsement of PDF!" Maybe some queer voices should be silent. Come on, people, this is why we're losing rights. But it's not like the creators are actively trying to promote this kind of behavior, right? E.L. James did not write 50 Shades of Grey to encourage aspiring ingenues to sleep with their bosses. This is a fantasy. Depiction does not equal endorsement. What's compelling about these dynamics is the risk factor, the potential of getting caught, the consensual power imbalance. To me, it kind of acts as almost a visual role play for the viewer. It gives us the language to act out fantasy scenarios in our heads. However, in a white supremacist, heteropatriarchal society, some men, a lot of men, enjoy this a little too much. When the fetish becomes an excuse to act out weird shit, that's when things get dicey. Looking at you, Ace Carter. Don't even ask me to recap that drama. I simply do not have the energy to recite niche gay OnlyFans scandals. Many have even argued that fetishizing these kinds of dynamics actually upholds patriarchal masculinity, even in queer male spaces. In All About Love, Black feminist writer and activist Bell Hooks writes about gay erotica, stating,
"The images gay men seek are male, but males positioned in the same way as the male and female bodies of straight pornography. Whether catering to gay or straight males, patriarchal pornography is fundamentally a reenactment of dominant culture in the realm of the sexual."
This isn't to say that kinks in themselves are an endorsement of heteropatriarchal masculinity, but rather we should think more critically about the kinds of dynamics we foster. I think we often forget that gay men are still men, and they are just as capable of replicating heteropatriarchal values in their own spaces. Gay men growing up are also taught to aspire to and perform patriarchal masculinity. some of them never grow out of it. We all know who I'm talking about. And if we aren't necessarily aspiring to it, some of us certainly want to be desired by it. Like trade, which Mayru defined for Out Magazine in 2024 as,
among Black culture, trade initially was used to mean any uncommitted sex partner, but soon took on the connotations of specifically masculine and good-looking gay men, who either were straight or could pass as being masculine straight men, and this became the dominant usage, especially in ballroom culture.
I wonder if a reason why some gay men tend to lust after traditionally masculine guys consistently is because they've been denied access to it. By being desired by it, possessed by it even, they feel some kind of acceptance. It's normalizing. Who wears the pants in the relationship is a age-old question that ignorant people tend to ask same-sex couples to better understand who the breadwinner or the man is in any same-sex couple. By conforming to some kind of patriarchal romance, we believe, subconsciously or not, that we are getting closer to some kind of in-group acceptance. In my own experience, my then conservative parents never showed me queer media growing up. So the absence of healthy queer masculine representation led me to project my budding desires onto the stories of women. I identified with traditionally female protagonists because it was the closest thing I could ever get to seeing myself on screen. And from there, my tastes were shaped based on what I consumed. It only took me until my adult years to deconstruct that and realize that no, in fact, I don't want to date a dumb jock or have a house with 3 kids and a dog named Steve. I want a broke socialist it. Point being is, if the story were initially written by a cis gay man, I'm not exactly confident the dynamic would be the same, nor would it exactly present the same commentaries on masculinity and love. Except Heated Rivalry wasn't written by a gay man. The original text was written by, as far as we know, a straight woman. I know that there are some queer men out there that are uncomfortable with this, having their stories told through the perspective of someone that does not understand their lived experiences. This is an absolutely fair critique, and I do think that having Jacob Tierney, a queer man, helm the adaptation adds a lot more nuance to the story. However, I'd also like to invite people to consider that there is value in Reed's portrayal of queer masculinity. And while not perfect representation, I'm glad it was written. I, for one, am in complete support of a woman's right to write sports yaoi. More, please. Heated Rivalry centers 2 people around the same age, in similar positions, and on equal footing. The 2 boys are constantly trying to get a leg up on the other, trading blows and insults. This pairing is very similar to Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. Both romantic leads are of the same wealth, same class, both hail from families that are heads of state. Coincidentally, this is also an enemies to lovers story, and it's not lost on me that this particular dynamic was also written by a femme-presenting person. Personally, I find this kind of romance to be way hotter than an imbalanced dynamic because both parties can literally meet each other where they are at. The ice is an even playing field, and Hollander and Rosenhoff are always meeting at the center of the rink. Why is this the central dynamic? Well, for starters, I think it's a lot more believable. Let's be real. What happens if a college coach starts an affair with his star quarterback? He gets fired. As much as we enjoy the risk, and it can be hot, the consequences often outweigh the pleasure. They can only really be sustained in certain environments, usually the realm of fantasy and roleplay. Furthermore, I would argue that this pairing is actually more likely to develop a healthy, long-term romance. Because Hollander and Rosenhoff are at similar points in their lives and are maturing at the same time, they have way more in common just in terms of emotional growth alone. Finally, and this is the most obvious one, the enemies to lovers trope is hot. In an April 2024 article for Cosmopolitan, interviewee and senior lecturer at Sansui University, Alexis Bowler, said,
"The enemies to lovers narrative arc offers conflict, tension, and anticipation in the form of comic misunderstandings, fiery chemistry, and witty, fast-paced banter. Audiences are often attracted to the idea of transformation, to universal themes such as renewal and change, forgiveness, and the power of love."
There is a sea of 8 billion people out there, but for some reason your mind gets stuck on this insufferable sexy baddie. It's all over pop culture. Like that one awful rom-com with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. I'm sorry, you expect me to believe that he is attracted to her? Well, she was born and raised in Spokane. That's your first red flag. One of my favorite examples of this trope maybe ever is Catra and Adora in She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. Initially childhood best friends, Catra and Adora are eventually pitted against each other on opposite sides of a war between the Horde and the Princesses of Power. As the seasons progress, their intense rivalry brews until, after Horde Prime takes over and disposes of Catra, Adora saves her best friend. Because despite the years of turmoil and conflict and hurt, she still loves the girl she grew up with. She still holds the promise she made all those years ago. It's from there that they reconcile, and in the end, their love literally saves the world. We are not just enamored by the tension and conflict, but the resolution and redemption. I think that's also why this pairing so heavily resonates with its femme audience. Under the heteropatriarchy, femme-presenting people are so often dominated by men in all spheres of life that they crave an alternative. Enter fantasy. They are able to safely explore their desires and needs through a male-male pairing vicariously because dating men in real life sucks. While not perfect, I think texts like Heated Rivalry can act as a framework to change the way we view power in relationships, especially among men. Here's hooks one more time.
Most gay men in our culture are as embracing of sexist thinking as are heterosexuals. Their patriarchal thinking leads them to construct paradigms of desirable sexual behavior that is similar to that of patriarchal straight men.
Speaking of sexual, Act 2. The lust. So I guess there's something to be said about how horny the show is, right? I mean, gay bars around the world wouldn't be throwing Heated Rivalry themed parties if they weren't trying to attract at least some feral homosexuals. The show is riddled with phallic imagery. The water bottles during the gym scene, the hockey stick, the fucking Corona bottles they sip on at the All-Stars game. The phallus isn't necessarily gratuitous though, there's meaning behind it. Aside from the obvious homoerotic tones, it acts as a bond between the boys. Water keeps the body alive. Hockey is their profession. A beer is a relaxing beverage. These images link the two together based on things that provide some kind of sustenance. And I don't think this is accidental, not by any means. I also think the choice to make their first spicy scene together the workout is smart because it edges the audience. It's a kind of metaphorical strip tease, you know, leaving things to the imagination, leaving the audience waiting in anticipation. I could do this for hours. In the last couple years, there's been this growing disdain among young queer people for sex scenes in media. We all know the type, right? Those crusty basement dwellers that can't get laid, so they take out their pent-up sexual frustration onto other people. Gay incels in 2026. What the hell, sure. However, I would argue that the sex between our leading men is not just designed to fill space. No, this is about building chemistry and desire. It's no secret that testosterone-fueled libido often causes us to think with our dicks before our hearts and minds. Hollander and Rosenoff's initial connection is built on lust, with the latter being very direct about what he wants. In the book, Reed describes him as a sex god at 19. Ilya Rozanov is a classic boy. He knows he's hot, he likes the attention, he's constantly fawned over by beautiful men and women. To him, sex is a simple thing. It's purely for pleasure. This directness works in Hollander's favor because he doesn't necessarily know how to, at least at the start of the relationship, articulate his needs and desires. So, to be approached by someone who's so forward helps him embrace his sexuality. The big point of contention in Hollander's journey is that he's afraid to come out. He's afraid of what it'll mean for his career, his family. There's something quite endearing about the way he bashfully admits to starlet and failed romance, Rose Landry, no relation to Sammy Landry, that he enjoys bottoming. One of the biggest concerns of closeted gay men is the perception of their peers that enjoying being penetrated somehow makes you less of a man. Because what's worse than being a man to these people? a woman.
I'm reading. Face.
In Miss Major Speaks, revolutionary activist and icon Miss Major, may she rest in power, discusses the ongoing conflict between the cis, gay, and trans communities. In her conversation with friend and writer Toshio Moronek, she says,
I think it goes back to gay guys might have some self-loathing because they get put into the box with the women. And all the shit women deal with, trans or not, no one chooses the stress that society places on us as women.
Hence, why so many gay men are desperate to be accepted by the in-group. They do not want to be put in the same box as women because that would mean experiencing a fraction of what they go through every single fucking day. This is only exacerbated by the circumstances Hollander and Rosenoff find themselves in. Men's sports are one of the biggest breeding grounds for internalized bigotry. When you're in such a tight, rigid space, any form of social deviation will get you immediately ousted from the in-group. I mean, my own middle school lacrosse team wasn't exactly a fan that I liked to pick flowers on the sidelines and flinched at violence. We then internalize these narratives, clinging to the approval of some perpetual disappointed father figure.
This is the only way, so be it.
I'm not claiming it's particularly revolutionary, but it's refreshing to see someone like Hollander, a conventionally attractive, successful, masculine-presenting athlete, take ownership of his sexuality. Anyways, back to lust. As their situationship blooms, the sex only becomes more passionate and intimate. It's kind of hard to believe that Hudson, Williams, and Connor's story are not openly queer because the way they make love to each other on screen is so believable. Like, have they done this before? Is Connor's story a fan of the Eiffel Tower? These are the real journalistic questions we need to be asking. The way the leads make love to each other feels more than an act of lust. It's an attempt to feel close to the other. That's why they call it physical intimacy, kids. There's also something so hot about the way they tease it out. Rather than constantly fly out to each other every other weekend like they very feasibly could do given their financial resources, they let it simmer over the months. After eventually exchanging numbers, they sext and flirt, but it's like not every day, it's a gradual drip, leaving the other wanting more. This push and pull is, in my opinion, an inherent part of what keeps desire alive. It can't be too sparse or people will lose interest, but if you keep up the tension and let the simmer slowly boil over, now that's where things get interesting. Sometimes we want what is just out of reach. What was that? Anyways, sometimes we want what is just out of reach. I mean, that's what Robin said in Dopamine, right?
Nothing's ever going to taste just as sweet as when it is just out of reach.
The inherent push and pull of Hollander and Rosenoff behind the scenes is exactly what keeps them coming back for more. Instead of always giving it up for the other, they're able to deny themselves and create healthy distance for some time. That is until things get a little too real, and then Hollander really tries to put some space between him and Rosenoff by disappearing into a relationship with starlet and actress Rose Landry. And thus brings forth my first major criticism of Heated Rivalry: the women. I completely understand that Heated Rivalry is a largely male and homoerotic story, but I take issue with the way women are handled, both in the original text and the adaptation. For example, Rose Landry is a classic beard, an opposite-sex partner that someone takes to disguise their sexuality. And while it's nice that Hollander is good to her and treats her with respect and they end on good terms, Rose Landry's purpose in the story is mostly just to, 1, affirm his homosexuality, 2, act as a confidant in his emotional journey, and 3, make Rosenoff jealous. This could not be more apparent with the ending scene of episode 4, in which, at a nightclub in Montreal, Hollander and Rosenoff are found gazing at each other with lust and yearning and envy amidst the crowd of dancing people, while they both perform heterosexuality. Additionally, the character of Svetlana, Rosenoff's close friend and occasional fling, is meant to act as a confidant and further affirm his feelings for Hollander. Trans feminine people are also largely absent from the story. I mean, one makes a cameo in the show, but that's basically it. Like, no wonder Mother Aja Miyake Mugler did not live for the story. It's really not for her. Even the identities they take to disguise the fling, Jane and Lily, are intended to be disposable. The way women are unintentionally used as pawns in these gay boys' romance, I find to be quite outdated. Ugh, helicopter. I hate living by the hospitals, the sirens go all night. They either exist to reaffirm or rehabilitate our leads. Like, we're way past the age of Love, Simon, where the central conflict is a man who's afraid to come out and therefore women around him are casualties. I'm getting really tired of this shit. Now, this is not to say that Crave, Rachel Reed, Jacob Tierney et al. Are misogynists. No, this is not a Joanne Rowling situation, but it should be critiqued nonetheless. All this is to say, I think Heated Rivalry does an excellent job balancing tension and release. The lust portrayed on the show is gripping, and I completely understand why so many people have the sex scenes of the show bookmarked on twitter.com. I totally get it. It's hot. However, if the show were just a fuckfest, it wouldn't have such a passionate, dedicated fan base now, would it? So, let's dive a little deeper into the second hole now, shall we?
Act 3. The Yearning.
In The Intimate Animal, sexologist Dr. Justin Garcia discusses why love and sex are not just biological, but necessary components to human survival. In the intro, he writes,
"So few of us understand this essential drive for intimacy, how it lives just under the surface of our desires, or how to harness it. We might not even recognize the need for intimacy as a biological drive. Perhaps it's because it lives in the shadow of that other primal urge, our sex drive."
While our sex drive often does take the forefront, the truth of the matter is most of us do yearn for something a little deeper. I previously mentioned that Rosenoff entered the relationship pleasure first. However, our sweet good boy, Shane Hollander, is a lover at heart.
Oh, God. That was what Shane wanted, wasn't it? He didn't just want to be Ilya's dirty secret. He didn't want their relationship to be nothing but sex. He wanted to comfort Ilya when he was sad and talk to him on the phone and snuggle together on the couch and watch movies. He would take the short phone call they had just shared over any of their sexual encounters. Well, almost any of their sexual encounters.
Hollander and Rosanov's relationship reminds me a lot of queer male dating in general, in that a lot of our platonic and romantic relationships start from sex. Especially with the advent of apps like Grindr, Scruff, and Sniffies, we can peruse a fast food selection of on-demand pleasure. This isn't inherently bad, but I do think some men tend to use sex as a social and romantic crutch. I want to make a distinction here between recreational and detrimental expressions of sex. Here's my definition of both.
Recreational sex is an act of sexuality that treats human intercourse as a pleasurable pastime to connect with others and engage in a mutual experience.
Think of it as adult play or hanging out with your bros. It can even be done within the confines of a relationship, or several if you're in Seattle. Everyone wants to be polyamorous these days.
Detrimental sex is an act of sexuality that masks a desire for deeper connection and yearning, often messy, insecure. It's damaging for one, if not both parties.
So when I say men use sex as a crutch, I specifically am referring to detrimental expressions of sex. These are people that do not know how to connect with others on an emotional level or discuss their needs. Not every person who attends the orgy or the afters is gonna be like this, but we've all encountered at least one of them. When we aren't intentional about the time we spend connecting with others, we run the risk of averting our eyes from our more intimate desires. Where I think we can find empowerment in this is learning to marry the two, even in a platonic context. Like, there is nothing wrong with a consistent friends with benefits situation. You should absolutely kiss your friends more. That's great. Go bang your bros.
Broadly speaking, it has long been assumed that while we need sex, we merely want intimacy. But I would argue that in fact, we want and need both, and that both sex and the full cocktail of emotional and physical intimacy are crucial not only to our individual happiness, but also to the survival of our species.
Oxytocin is a hormone released during moments of intimacy and relationship building. It also has several medicinal properties. In a 2020 study titled, "Is Oxytocin Nature's Medicine?", Sisu Carter et al. writes,
"Within human patients, higher levels of ascites oxytocin were associated with lower levels of the pro-inflammatory cytokine interleukin-6, and a significant survival advantage. Moreover, oxytocin inhibited interleukin-6 production in cancer cell lines. Oxytocin also may restore tissue after procedures that damage the nervous system, intestines, and cardiovascular system.
Our yearning for intimacy, both physical and emotional, is a part of our biology. It's so astounding to me that there are so many Gen Z doomers out there that are so sex negative when quite literally having some form of physical intimacy in your life has several health benefits. So, where does Hollander tie into all of this? Well, his yearning for a deeper connection stems from a couple things. The first is that he really did not have any fulfilling romantic relationships in his life. The second is that, as previously discussed, Rozanoff is the only person in his life that understands exactly what he's going through, whereas someone like Scott Hunter, we'll get to you, is far more experienced in the sport. The two protagonists started off at the same time, in the same boat. If anyone is going to understand what he's going through, it's Ilya Rozanoff. Yearning is often born out of something we lack: romance, stable friendships, sexual attention. And that desire can drive us into some pretty interesting spaces. On the one hand, we could sublimate it into art. Songs like The Subway by Chappell Roan and Big Deal by Lucy Dacus are these gut-wrenching songs about deep, sapphic yearning. On the other, if we're not careful, we can find ourselves in some pretty compromising positions, or as I like to call it, settling.
Are you not having enough sex? Settle for your pasty coworker. Sure, he's a bit of a misogynist, but at least he wants to f you. Are you still single? Settle for the mutual online who lives across the country. You might not ever meet in person, but at least he likes your close friend story. Are you lonely all the time and can't handle the sound of your own thoughts rattling around in your mind telling you how unworthy and undesirable you are and that you're gonna die alone? Me too! Settle for the first stranger you meet at the club. It's hard to tell if that's herpes, but at least the music is so loud that you can't hear the voices.
Us romantics in particular struggle with this. I mean, I'm far from the first person to say it, but dating is annoying. And in the absence of success, we lower our standards and accept whatever comes our way. Looking for love in all the wrong places refers to unhealthy patterns that we develop in dating to basically cope with long-term internal problems. All this is to say, don't do that shit. Obviously easier said than done, but don't be desperate. It's not a cute look. Which brings me to my second major critique of heated rivalry: class. In the digital age, romance and sex is more accessible than ever. To satisfy our cravings for company, we often turn to social media and dating apps. The ever-persistent yearning for love is no longer really a matter of who you know, who your friends set you up with, or what circles you run in, but now an attention lottery. However, it must be said that the reason why they are able to even remotely maintain their situation comes down to circumstance. They are both incredibly rich and successful. I mean, for Christ's sake, Shane Hollander owns a fucking cabin in the Ontario countryside. As much as I enjoy this story, let's also not pretend that there is some element of wish fulfillment here. I do wish Reed and Tierney did a better job, at least in the first part, interrogating the ways class and wealth played a role in sustaining their romance. While it is wonderful that they get to have their cake and eat it too, many other queer and trans folks are not so lucky. This isn't to minimize our fictional character struggles, but let's say, for the sake of argument, that Shane Hollander was outed to the public and was ousted from his team and shamed out of the NHL for being gay. He would still be very successful and rich, have plenty of job opportunities afterwards, be embraced by the LGBTQ community as a martyr. Like, I'm sorry, but I kind of have a hard time feeling empathy for the character as someone who is outed to their formerly religious parents. Class plays a huge role in the trajectory of our characters' lives, and for every Shane Hollander, there is a Damon Evangelista. Back to yearning. Even though Hollander is far more in touch with what he feels and more expressive about it, it's not exactly like Rozanoff isn't yearning either. Throughout the story, he spends quite a bit of time observing his rival from afar. This yearning comes to a head in 2016, in which they spend an entire afternoon together. I mean, it's not just sex. They cuddle, they share stories, Rozanov even cooks for him. It's also the first time that they call each other by their first names, Shane and Ilya. And that is where shit gets real. Now, in classic gay man fashion, Shane runs in the face of vulnerability. This isn't surprising. Instead of embracing the moment and letting things be as they are, the potential of him being seen, both externally by other people and internally by someone else, causes him to flee. It's a classic fight or flight situation. Unfortunately, this is not an uncommon experience. We live in times where instant gratification is so accessible that we often turn to that and kind of drown ourselves in it while running away from sometimes uncomfortable but necessary, even healthy, situations. You know, sometimes we friend zone people because we're not interested, but there's also people that do it not because they're not interested, but because they're scared of getting hurt by someone who could truly love them and see them as they are. I've certainly done that before. In the intro of All About Love, Hook's muses,
I am afraid we may be raising a generation of people who will grow up afraid to love, afraid to give themselves completely to another person, because they have seen how much it hurts to take the risk of loving and having it not work out.
When the potential for more is acknowledged, that's terrifying. It means we are opening ourselves up to the possibilities of all the things going right and everything going horribly wrong. In the face of vulnerability, Shane and Ilya exercise caution in different ways. One disappears into a relationship and the other pretends to be aloof and disinterested. This is how our two leads protect themselves in the face of vulnerability. Shane flees, Ilya feigns. And these defense mechanisms are not healthy. They put themselves and others in emotional harm's way because in not being honest about who they are and what they need, they create and present a false version of themselves to the world. And this creates subsequently unrealistic expectations and a lack of communication. It's dishonest. It's a perfectly human response, but I think we can all learn a lesson on what not to do from their example. But even then, they still find themselves at that same nightclub in Montreal, incandescent with yearning, gazing at each other longingly with envy and jealousy and passion. Even during that period of distance, they are still bonded. And then, the All-Star Game happens.
Act 4. The Transformation.
In the world of heated rivalry, there are two major turning points that give way to Shane and Ilya's romance. Externally, Scott Hunter's coming out. Internally, the intimacy they share at the All-Star Game. Let's start with the latter. After his tryst with Landry, our boys reconnect at a bar at the hotel they're staying at. And you can tell just from the smile that Ilya is giving him that he is so ecstatic that things did not work out with Landry. I think there's something to be said about the obvious metaphor of them playing on the same team. Think of the euphemism playing for the other team, which we use to describe people who are attracted to the same sex. Wow. It's almost as if that metaphor is the whole damn point. Oh! After a tender moment on the beach, they meet in Ilya's room to discuss the state of their relationship. The mutual desire is finally acknowledged, and they spend the night cuddling? Not f***ing. Cuddling. There's something so powerful about these more vulnerable moments. It resonates with me because in popular media, masculine presenting people are not shown to be as open and honest about their feelings. I mean, I'll say it, communication is sexy. In the book, Reed shows a bit more interior to this moment, writing,
Ilya gave in and reached for him. As soon as he had Shane in his arms, he was done for. He leaned forward and took his mouth. It felt different this time, as he wrapped his arms around Shane's back and pulled him close against his body. Shane's hands cradled Ilya's face as he kissed him with the force of everything they had almost said out loud.
This is a scene that was further expanded upon in the show, but one of my favorite moments in their entire journey is when Ilya confides in Shane after his father dies. And when Ilya mentions that he's far too tired to speak in English, Shane accommodates him by encouraging him to just say how he feels in Russian. I was completely transfixed by this. Firstly, by the absolute masterclass in performance from Connor Story, but also because the fact that he finally confesses his love for Shane. And he has no idea. It's so touching. The way that he knows he could say exactly how he feels without completely being understood. It's both safe, but it's also so real and powerful. And I don't know, it just made me feel like all the good feels in my chest. It was really sweet. I thought it was a really sweet moment. Externally, we have Scott Hunter's declaration of love for Kip Grady. I haven't touched on it too much because frankly, Hunter's B-plot in the show is not as interesting, and I think it serves more as world building to support the central romance, but I did enjoy his episode, even though the dialogue left, much to be desired. That is just a consistent issue I do have with the show, is the writing and dialogue. I hope that is improved upon in the next season. Tierney, I just want you to know that I am available to write for you for season 2. Let a homo know, I do have some zany ideas. Scott Hunter coming out after winning the 2017 Stanley Cup reminds me a lot of when Gus Kenworthy in 2018 at the Winter Olympics kissed his then partner Matthew Wilkes, in a sense that it provided a lot of visibility for queer athletes around the world. Moments like that paved the way for other people like him, other queer and trans athletes, to speak their truth. And Hunter would later go on during awards season to discuss his experiences coming out and the impact it had on other people. And it is in that moment, after contemplating an invitation from Shane, that Ilya finally sees a future for them. A big, bright, beautiful future. And so, they spend 2 weeks at a romantic getaway at Shane's cabin in Ontario. It's honestly beautiful. There's something so tender about the way that they wear their hearts on their sleeves, unafraid to say how they feel, dream of a future where they could actually make things work. Even the sex scenes are different. Whereas in the past, Ilya was on top of Shane, now they are side by side, or Shane is on top of Ilya. It's almost as if through sex, we are able to witness the emotional and romantic growth of our leads. This is my favorite episode of the season, not just because of the tender romantic moments and the very good feelings that I had leaving the episode, but also because I think it most openly showcases an alternative to patriarchal masculinity. Despite their circumstances, here we have 2 men in touch with their emotions, being vulnerable and honest with each other, seeing the other exactly as they are. They're not compromising their masculinity, but transforming it. Where their personalities used to clash, now they exist in complementary color. Carly Rae Jepsen croons on favorite color.
When I'm next to you, we blend into my favorite color. I'm bright baby blue, falling into you, falling for each other.
I mean, she also sings Paint Me Up on the bridge, so let's hope none of that is happening. In The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love, Hook's muses on the way critical thought can only do so much to help men transform before saying,
critical analysis is important when it promotes growth, but it's never enough. The work of affirmation is what brings us together. When men learn to affirm themselves and others, giving the soul care, then they are on the path to wholeness. When men are able to do little acts of mercy, they can be in communion with others without the need to dominate.
This right here, the cabin, being honest with each other, making compromises to make their relationship work, even sitting next to Shane while telling the truth to his parents. These are all small, beautiful acts of mercy. They showcase a more tender, queer masculinity. The love they share for each other transforms them both into better people. As Ilya softens and learns to be more honest, Shane grows more confident and assertive, asking for what he wants and standing his ground. Remember how Bowler said,
audiences are often attracted to the idea of transformation, to universal themes such as renewal and change, forgiveness, and the power of love.
This right here is precisely why. Even though it is fantasy, there are still elements of truth to it. When you love someone, really, truly love someone, you see them as they are, flaws and all. That's scary. Being exposed like that is vulnerable, and not everyone takes to our uglier moments very kindly, but if we're lucky, the right people stick around, sit with us through that darkness, and help us grow towards the light. I think we're forgetting that in the gym scene, Ilya insists that Shane drinks water after their workout to help him recover. Even in their earliest moments, there was still an undercurrent of care for the other. Ilya and Shane always saw each other. Now, before wrapping up, I do want to present a final critique. This story is not particularly revolutionary, and it should not be treated as such. Don't get me wrong. Heated Rivalry's cultural dominance is a net positive for queer representation in sports. On its own, it's just a story about two conventionally attractive gay men, emphasis on men, who have a ton of privilege behind them. Women are set dressing, and the presence of sapphic and trans folks is all but absent. Only one of our principal bachelors is a person of color, and I've seen several people online critique it by saying that this isn't the most nuanced portrayal, and it doesn't explore the topic very well beyond, Shane, there's a lot of people looking up to you right now. If you want to know how we could potentially create more revolutionary art or work, we should turn to the words of someone like Miss Major. During that same conversation with Moronic, Major discusses what it was like living in New York during the Stonewall riots of 1969.
The night of Stonewall is how people talk about it, but it was more like a week. People want to know the little details, but what I remember most is being scared as hell. We were fighting for our lives. They're still killing us. They're still not giving us the respect we're due for putting up with their shit for all these years.
Major, alongside other important activists like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, would subsequently be ignored and not invited to the first Pride ever. Black trans women consistently remain underrepresented and unsupported within our community. If we want to have any idea of what can actually liberate us as a society, I think we need to center trans voices more, especially in popular media, because their stories matter just as much. You know what would actually be a revolutionary love story? One where the lead was a trans femme or trans masked person that didn't have a tragic ending. Like Angel and Poppy in Pose. Now that would be some powerful shit. Our history of action, resilience, and liberation is often whitewashed and turned palatable for cis-het audiences, as evidenced by that god-awful movie that retold Stonewall in 2015. Stories like Heated Rivalry can absolutely be a jumping off point into more nuanced conversations, but we should not be treating them like the pinnacle of LGBTQ+ resistance and representation. Where I find Heated Rivalry at its most powerful is in the way it showcases love. Scott, Kip, Ilya, Shane, these stories might not be anything out of the ordinary, but it's the little details that make them sing. The way Kip picks up a shift just to see Scott before his big game, or the way Ilya looked for Shane on the beach. These expressions of love are powerful because despite circumstance, despite rejection, despite all of the fear and shit that's going on around them, they still choose each other. You know, I joked about settling earlier, but the truth is, Hooks is right. We do live in a culture of fear. We are averse to discomfort, and it's much easier to settle and find a quick release. I personally know many people that use attention from strangers, both online and in person, to distract from a lack of meaningful connection in their own day-to-day lives. I used to be that person. We don't think we're deserving of good, or we're desperate to not feel alone or to find love, so we settle for less than we deserve. The truth is, no, you shouldn't fuck your pasty coworker. Just because he's available does not mean he'd treat you right. No, you probably won't go the distance with your internet crush. You have never met in person, and you have no idea how they actually are, let alone how they live. No, you shouldn't make out with a stranger at the club just to distract from your own feelings of self-loathing. You are worth more than that. I will always be an advocate for platonic sex, cruising, and casual hookups because I do think they provide some kind of social value. That is a wonderful part of queer masculine culture, and I reject anyone who says otherwise. But when it comes to matters of the heart, we must look deeper, and I think that we can use texts like Tierney and Reed's to further figure out how we can communicate those needs. Heated Rivalry's central message of love is powerful. It models a deconstruction of patriarchal masculinity and presents to the audience a tender, merciful love between two men that deserve better than the cards they were dealt. We can all learn something from Shane and Ilya. We are all deserving of knowing that kind of love, even if it takes a bit longer than we'd hoped. It's far from perfect representation, but I believe that the way Heated Rivalry handles love, lust, yearning, and romance is compelling and can offer us the language to better express our own desires and needs in our day-to-day lives. While it's important to not get swept up in the fantasy and critique the story, the lessons to be learned are profound. I guess the real Heated Rivalry was the friends we made along the... Fuck.
Trust your intuition. Put your hand on your heart and listen.
Act 5. The end.
So, this year hasn't started exactly in the way I'd hoped. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot I am grateful for. My community, my loved ones, my health, my creativity. There's lots that I am very, very thankful for in my life. But over the course of the last 6 months, I've experienced quite a bit of loss. The worst of it was last December when my grandfather passed away very suddenly. I was visiting my family in Texas for Christmas and my grandparents' 60th wedding anniversary. The day after we all got to be together, fully reunited, me, my family, my grandparents, my dad's side of the family, all reunited for the first time in 10 years to celebrate their anniversary. The day after, he just collapsed. And a couple hours later, he was gone. I was flying back to Washington when it happened. My whole family got to be together and grieve in the wake of his death, and I was completely alone. I had to miss the funeral too because of work. Do you have, any idea how that feels? That kind of shit changes you. I felt a shift in my body, locking in. The same way Christian historians categorize history as BC and AD, time was now before Grandpa and after Grandpa. Loss like that puts the sanctity of life and love into perspective. You really never know how much time you have left in a given connection with any person. A high school sweetheart could get married and then 10 years down the line get divorced. You could lose friends at the drop of a hat and have no idea why. A pedestrian could be walking down the street unsuspecting and then get hit by a car. And that's it. Things live and then they die. That's why we call it ghosting, right? The potential connection is suddenly evaporated, and all you're left with is the phantom specter haunting every corner of your mind of what could have been. In a 2014 post for her blog titled All My Loose Ends, Jamie Anderson once wrote,
"Grief, I've learned, is really love. It's all the love you want to give but cannot give. The more you love someone, the more you grieve. All of that unspent love gathers up in the corners of your eyes, and in that part of your chest gets an empty and hollow feeling. The happiness of love turns to sadness when unspent. Grief is just love with no place to go."
Handling grief is hard. Most of us don't know how to sit with it, much less channel that love into something productive. Some of us find counsel in community, therapists, or art. Others turn to much worse methods. I once spoke to a man who lost his mother last year, and to cope, he ended up falling into addiction. Fentanyl, to be specific. I won't share the details of his sobriety because that's not my journey or story to tell, but the one thing that has stuck with me since that conversation was what he told me afterwards. He said, "Grief is one son of a bitch." Yeah? You think? In the wake of loss, I find myself scared to open up again. I'm scared to connect with my friends because what happens if we fall out suddenly? I'm scared to speak to my aging relatives because what happens if they die tomorrow and all of that love is just gone? I'm scared to open my heart because what if they aren't honest with me again? Grief is a crucible, right? The heat is unbearable and it melts you down to your most basic elements. It's uncomfortable, it's painful, it's engulfing. But it's also what makes us stronger. The thing that nobody teaches you about taking the L is that there is an L in both loss and lesson. Sure, you might not have gotten the job you wanted, but you learned a little more about what you want and what kind of work you're looking for and what will bring you joy. Optimism. The glass is half full. Think about the ending of Wicked. In order to save Oz and put an end to the wizard's fascism, Elphaba must hand over her crusade to free the animals to her best friend Glinda. In an act of sacrifice, she gives her the Grimoire, fakes her death, and disappears into the wind with her lover Fiero. Her own best friend thinks she is dead. In their final moments together, Glinda and Elphaba reflect on their friendship over the years, singing,
"Who can say if I've been changed for the better, but because I knew you, I have been changed for good."
That is the point of why we connect, why we love. We can use science and metaphysics and physiology all we want to rationalize, but at the end of the day, if you ask me, I think the meaning of love is to change. When you love someone, you're confronted with your own flaws, and if we're lucky, we get to look inward and say, I need to be better. If I'm going to make this work, I need to be better. Not just for you, but for me. I have loved many times in my life, friends, vocations, careers, partners. Through loss, I find that no matter how painful the sensation, I am permanently changed. I mean, if we want to throw in another fucking Ariana Grande quote, I'm so fucking grateful for my ex. In reflecting on Heated Rivalry, I keep coming back to the final episode, the final chapters. There's something so profound in the way Shane and Ilya confess their love for each other, that despite the odds, they will still continue to choose each other. They always will. Their love transformed each other for the better and the world around them. We can discourse all we want about the ethics of Heated Rivalry at all, but at the end of the day, the reason why we're drawn to these kinds of stories is because we too, at some capacity or some level, yearn to be transformed by love's tender embrace. It takes many forms: a friend, a pet, a parent, a confidant, a job, a partner, but We yearn to be known, yearn to be understood, yearn to be changed for good. That is the most important takeaway of Heated Rivalry. Love transforms you. Even in our most dire and unexpected circumstances, human connection is what makes us better. We live in an increasingly isolating time. People are stuck on their phones, using AI in place of intimacy, disconnected from their communities. Despite this, if a story as simple as Heated Rivalry can reach so many people, touch so many hearts, inspire good, then maybe there is hope after all. I wrote a poem I'd like to share to close out the video. I've been spending a lot of time in the last couple months thinking and asking myself, what do I, the private person behind Archie Merc, want? What is it that I yearn for? What is it that I truly want? What does love mean to me? And I don't know if this is a perfect summary. It may not be fully complete, but I think it's a good start. When I think of love, I think of a home. A quiet cabin by the Puget Sound. The brick exterior is weathered, ivy overgrown. It's seen better days, but through sun and storm, it stands. When I think of love, I think of a hearth. Inside the cabin, she keeps her people warm, intentional, persistent, ever glowing. We are all drawn to the fire's motherly embrace. When I think of love, I think of humanity, intertwined in our shared struggle for intimacy. When I think of love, I think of hours passing like raindrops in the downpour, so fleeting, so sacred. When I think of love, I think of heaven, paradise found in songbird calls and sun-bathed canyons. When I think of love, I think of you. No river, no mountain, no man, no God could ever stop me from yearning for you, my beloved. It's not the kind that limerence made, born out of a desperation to be seen. It's not the kind that lust taints, coming forth from our fatal breeds. It's pure and true, never asking for more than your extra time. It's coffee on a Saturday afternoon. It's feeling you even when you're far away. It's comfort in silence, knowing you don't have to say a word. It's found in shared interests, shared passion, shared art, shared desire. It's the kiss at the end of the night, when all you can think to yourself beneath the dimmed street light is how this moment could last forever. Wouldn't that be enough? In mundane moments, in stolen seconds, in this brief life we get to breathe, it's what makes us who we are. That kind of love.